Advertising intensity of the industry is an element that we'll explore. It's influenced by industry status, as well as its impact on the entrepreneur. This fits within industry structure as we continue our discussion on industry status. So when we look at defining advertising intensity, we're looking at the importance of advertising and branding to the success of competitors in a specific industry. And so this is the second leg of what we're going to be analyzing within this broader segment. High advertising industries are characterized by customers that prefer to buy and transact based on their histories. They prefer to buy based on past successful transactions, or they prefer to buy brands they know or products they've heard of. Established companies that have a reputation for success are going to have a unique advantage in these high advertising intensity industries, and new ventures have a much harder time with competing. There may also be perks in play, things like loyalty programs that are offered by the credit card companies, by the airlines, by the hotels, by retailers, that make it more difficult for new entrants to compete. Now, for many of us, we may not be starting a credit card company or a hotel or an airline, but we want to recognize that increasingly there are other technology-based firms and or small firms that are doing similar things. They're building and populating profiles, they're integrating networks, they're building out preference engines, they are developing one-click transactions online, and doing other things that essentially add more stickiness or adherence to their customers on those selected platforms and sites. So we want to think broadly about the variety of things that can take place and that can influence advertising and influence the resistance of a customer to trying something new. When we look at low advertising intensity industries, customers here are more willing to try new products and to try new brands. There might be other influences in play. There might not be established product leaders. There may not be established brands in that space. There might be low switching cost, so it's easy for them to experiment and try a variety of different things before committing to one thing. There might be differentiation and or other value that the new products deliver. This is certainly the preferred scenario for new ventures, to be able to operate in the lower advertising intensity industries. We can go to IBIS, continue our exploration of online tutoring, and think about the advertising element. And when we look at the barriers to entry section, there's one paragraph that really addresses this. While instruction techniques may vary, tutor to tutor, the same general purpose of educating students remains. And as a result, new firms, prospective firms, must be willing to spend large sums of money on advertising. Now, that's not good news if you're a new entrant considering the online tutoring space. What is large? How do you quantify large? Well, IBIS quantifies it as a % of revenue. In the left-hand column, you can see the average cost as a percentage of their revenue that companies spend on wages and purchases, on depreciation, marketing, and rents. And we see that the average company will spend 1.6% of their revenues on marketing. We see that for online tutoring, it's more than twice that. 3.8% of revenues are spent on marketing. And if you're a young firm, if you're an unknown firm with an unknown brand, a new entrant, you're likely going to have to spend a lot more than that. Maybe 10%, maybe 20%. That essentially would make your 8.4% profit go to zero, and perhaps be zero for a year or two to build that brand and to build that market awareness. We also want to think about who's our customer, and IBIS helps with this as well. Starting online tutoring, perhaps our customer are public schools or private schools. Perhaps they are public universities or private universities or for-profit universities. Or perhaps it's the end consumer. It's the student themselves or the parents themselves that we're going to try and sell our product to and market to. Or maybe some combination. But what we want to recognize is that there are options for who we want to target, and the relative expense of targeting them is something we want to consider as well. The relative influence of advertising on their decision of what to buy and what not to buy should be part of our decision as well on who we want to market to. Once we've identified them, we can do some fairly simple things. We can look at mailing lists that are out there. If we want to target the schools or the universities, we could spend all day and all night looking at websites, trying to collect contact information for people at universities that we think would be interested, or we could buy lists. We could buy contact lists of names and phone numbers or emails of influencers at these different institutions, at these different schools, at these different universities, and that might be a more effective way of spending our time and money. Or if we're trying to sell directly to consumers and we're trying to find households of a certain income level and a certain geography that have school-age children, whatever our profile is, both our demographic and our behavioral profiles, we might be able to find those on some of the list and let that be our entry in the targeting. Now, for many of us, we think that, well, social media is the way we're going to do it, and online is the way we're going to do it, and it's going to be viral. Well, good luck with that. Easier said than done. Certainly more complicated than you may think. This is a profile of the various tools and techniques, as well as companies and providers in the online marketing space. So this does not include anything you may do via print. It does not include anything that you may do via other radio, media, etc. platforms. Does not include conferences or other things you may attend or exhibit at. This simply is a snapshot of the various online tools that are out there, be it email marketing, social media ads, other automation platforms, business intelligence and customer experience elements. It's a complicated landscape that you want to be thoughtful, driven by the core values you're delivering, the audiences that you're targeting, and the relative advertising intensity that you're up against. So in summary, when you look at industry structure, there are a number of elements and sub-elements of the sub-elements that we're going to talk about, but all of it's geared towards helping you better understand the industry and how to compete effectively within that. As we look at advertising intensity, it's something that low advertising intensity does present a more affordable opportunity for new entrants to enter and compete effectively on a more level playing ground. It also suggests that the brand loyalty of incumbents, the brand loyalty that may exist for the companies that you're already competing against, may be surmountable. It may be something that you can conquer, not easily, but with more relative ease than if you're competing in a more high-intensive industry. So we encourage you to think about low capital as well as low advertising industries and how you can enter in success and realize your success within them.